Hello and welcome to Gardening with Ben's award-winning podcast, as voted by Grow Your Own magazine and by my followers and listeners. So if you're new to the podcast, make sure you click that subscribe button to stay up to date with all our podcasts, listen back to all our previous episodes, sit back, grab a brew and let's enjoy today's episode. Hello and welcome back to Gardening with Ben for today's podcast. It's now Saturday and we are into April now, and yes, the weather is still cold, but it's hoping to warm up a bit later in this week, hopefully, fingers crossed, and you can carry on with those gardening jobs, because it certainly has been freezing at the moment. And if you listen to yesterday's episode, we talk about all the jobs what need doing in the garden in April, and getting ahead and getting things ready and getting things tidy and sorted for that gardening year, because there's so much to get done in the garden and keeping on top of it is the hardest bit sometimes. And if you just follow things through and tick them off as you've completed them, then you can stay ahead of time and get things sorted and get it looking good and get it all ready for the summer season, ready for it all to be in bloom and hopefully really colourful as well. So in today's episode we'll be talking about all the seeds what you can plant in April, and as well as all the plants and getting all them ready for growing as well, even though you might want to hold off a few days until it does get a bit warmer, because they won't probably germinate until the weather warms up, unless you've got a heated greenhouse or obviously a windowsills. But sometimes growing on windowsills can make them a bit leggy, so sometimes they're best off in natural light where there's plenty of sunlight around to stop them from getting leggy, because that's one issue that can be done. I don't grow on windowsills, I grow everything myself in a greenhouse, and my greenhouse is also unheated. So we're going to be looking at that today. And if you've not checked out my other podcast platform called Gardening and Allotment Tips, check that out. There's a link in the description, and in that podcast we just talk about different issues every episode. And in yesterday's episode we talked about how to attract the birds to the garden and the benefits of attracting garden birds to your garden, because that is certainly one thing that does need to be done, and if you can do it, well done, that's brilliant. And I've just started looking after the garden birds, and I'm getting excited to seeing all which varieties of birds come to my plot. So check out that episode, and we'll be doing lots more episodes on how to grow things and different gardening tips and advice. So check out that podcast and subscribe to it. So like I said, today's episode we're going to be talking about all the seeds that you can plant in April. So make sure you've got a notebook, or you can listen back to the episode again and find out all the seeds what need to be planted. So when we talk about what needs to be done in the garden each month, we'll talk about what needs to be done in the vegetable garden, in the fruit patch, and what needs to be done in the flower beds. So first off, we're going to be starting to talk about what needs to be done in the vegetable beds. And the first on the list is aubergines. Aubergines, you probably should have sown them around January, February time. As they start to become seedlings and get bigger, you can start potting these up into individual pots. But be careful not to damage the plants, because they are very delicate when they're small and you don't want to snap them. And yeah, get them potted up into smaller pots, and then when they're big enough, then that's when you can transplant them into the final growing place. Beetroot. You can either sow beetroot in seed trays or directly in the ground in April, but obviously the weather's cold at the moment, so the best option would be is to sow them in seed trays, so that you get a better chance of germination and not losing the seeds. Next up are broad beans. Now, broad beans again can be directly sown into the ground at this time of year, but I've sown all mine in pots this year, and then I will plant them out when they're bigger. The reason why I've done this is because mice and rats like to eat them, and I don't want to lose all the beans that I sow, so I've planted them up in pots until they get bigger and strong enough to grow outside, and then we'll plant them all outside. Broccoli. Broccoli is quite expensive to buy in supermarkets these days, and obviously it's one of your superfoods. So why not try growing some broccoli? And the best thing about broccoli is that you can just snip it off when some's ready, and leave it to continue growing. And you can just pick it as and when you need some for that Sunday dinner, and you can enjoy it and get healthy from it as well. It tastes absolutely delicious when you grow it yourself as well. Cabbages. Now is the time to be sowing summer and autumn cabbage seeds. Cauliflower. Again, now is the time to be sowing your cauliflower. I've said this many a times that I grow purple cauliflower because that seems to grow the best. And yes, it has got a purple heart and the florets are purple, and it tastes absolutely delicious. For some reason I can grow them, but I can't grow white cauliflowers for trying. So I always stick to growing purple cauliflowers. So if you've not got any luck of growing white ones, give the purple ones a go and let me know how you get on. Courgettes. Now these are expensive from the shops. I don't know why, because they're very easy to grow, and you can get absolutely tons of courgettes from the plant, and the more that you pick them, the more they will keep growing. And if you pick them when they're small, then you'll get a bigger crop, but if you leave them to grow big, you won't get as many growing on the plant. And now is the time to be sowing your courgettes. Cucumbers. Now if you've not had a chance to grow them yet, now is the time to be getting them in. If you leave it any later, you won't get as big a harvest, so you need to be getting your cucumbers in this month. I've just planted all mine, and I always plant Market More variety because you don't have to worry about sorting out the flowers from the male and the female and stuff like that, and they're nice and simple to grow and they taste absolutely delicious. French beans. Again, like broad beans, these can be sown directly into the ground, but again I have sown these in plant pots before planting them out. Again, I don't want the mice and the rats eating them and losing all the seeds that I've sown. Next up is globe artichoke. Have you tried growing these before? I've certainly not, and I've just actually sown some. So it's going to be my first year growing globe artichoke, and we're going to see how we actually get on with growing it. I don't think I've ever actually tasted one before as well, so that's going to be new for me as well, and I'm looking forward to giving it a try and seeing how they actually turn out. So stay tuned and keep updated on my Instagram, and you'll be able to see how we get on with growing them this year. I might be a total failure, I might be a big success, but we'll certainly see how we get on with that. Next up is Jerusalem artichoke. Now this can be planted this month straight in the ground. It's usually a tuber when you plant these, so sow these straight into the ground and just keep them warm for the time being until they start to grow, and hopefully you'll get some great crops from them. Kale. Kale now can be sown in pots, and when they're big enough, transplant them to a bigger pot just to grow on a bit bigger, and then plant them out when the chance of frost has gone. And again, you can just keep snipping off bits and bobs as you want them and enjoy it. So you don't need many plants, you only need a few, and you can just keep snipping off a bit for your Sunday dinner to go with that broccoli and enjoy. Leeks. If you've not sown your leeks yet, this is the last month to get them sown. So if you're wanting to grow leeks, get them in the trays now, ready for planting out later. Lettuce. Now you can be starting to sow your lettuce. The best thing to do with lettuce is to sow it on intervals. Don't go sowing tons of lettuce all at the same time, just grow a few at a time, because they'll all be ready at the same time and you can often not eat them all at the same time, and once they're ready they'll soon bolt and get ruined and you'll end up losing them. So you only need to sow a few every few weeks and you'll keep getting that continuous harvest all the way through the year. Marrow. Like courgettes, marrows can be planted this month. Why not try and see how big you can actually grow a marrow? Just try and grow a marrow plant and see one marrow, just choose one marrow and see how big you can actually grow it, and see if you can beat the world record. I don't know how big the world record is, but I've seen some absolutely massive marrows online. Onions. If you're growing onions from sets, this is the month to plant them. Make sure you prepared the ground and dug it all over. Make sure it's all nice and weed free, and plant these in the ground. But make sure you put a net over them, because the birds do like to pinch the tops off the onions, and you don't want them to ruin them, and this can affect the growing. So make sure you net them over to stop the birds from eating them. Parsnips. Now parsnips are best sown straight in the ground, even at this temperature at the moment, but don't pull them up until after the first frost, as that gives them the flavour. Now the reason why we sow parsnips straight into the ground is that they hate to be transplanted, and it won't do them any favours. So sow them straight into the ground if you're wanting a good crop. Peas, like your broad beans and French beans, these can be planted straight into the ground at this time of year. But obviously if you have mice and rat issues, you'll want to plant them in pots first and then plant them out when they're big enough. And again, like other stuff, make sure you net them to stop the birds from eating them, because they do love eating peas. Peppers. You should have been sowing these like January, February time, so they should start popping through now, and you can start potting them up into individual pots and getting them growing. Again, these need to be grown somewhere nice and warm, in like a greenhouse or a polytunnel, to get the best results from them. You won't get very good results if you grow them outside. Potatoes. You can start to plant your potatoes. Who loves delicious potatoes? I know I certainly do. And allotment potatoes are the best tasting potatoes ever. A lot nicer than shop bought potatoes. And you can start to get them in the ground. If you've got some earlies, get them in. I always stick to Good Friday with planting my first lot of potatoes. It's all to do with the moon. It's an old wives' tale, and I've always stuck to that. Pumpkin. Now is the time to start sowing pumpkin seeds. And why not have a family competition to see who can actually grow the biggest pumpkin? Now obviously the more you look after the pumpkin, the more bigger it will grow. And if you're wanting just one big pumpkin, you need to take off any other pumpkins that form on it and just concentrate on growing that one pumpkin. Radish. Again, like lettuce, keep sowing them on a interval basis, because they will be ready and at the same time. So just keep sowing a few every few weeks, and you'll get a continuous harvest all the way through summer, and you can just easily add them to salads if you do like radish. Runner beans. Now is the time to be sowing those runner beans. Again, they can be sown straight in the ground, but mice and rats will come along and eat the beans if not careful. So I've sown all mine in pots, and then I will separate them all up and plant them out when they're tall enough and big enough. And they'll just need something to climb up and to hang off. And again, the more you pick them, the more they will keep growing and producing fantastic runner beans. And the best thing about runner beans is that you can freeze them as well, so that you can just use them as and when you need them. So if you grow a massive load, you can just freeze them all, and you'll be eating them all the way through to next year. Spring onions. Continue to sow spring onions this month for harvest for your salads. Now, a tip what somebody shared with me the other day is, rather than planting them in a row, plant them in a clump, and just sow some in a pot, and then take them out of the pot and plant them straight into the ground as like a clump. And they've had fantastic success doing it this way. So I'm certainly going to give that a try, and why not you? Squash. Again, like pumpkins, these can be sown this month. They take a long time to grow, so start your seeds off now in the greenhouse, and you could be having some squash around the end of August, September. Swede. You can sow these straight into the ground at this time of month. They will need thinning out when the plants get big enough, but they're best off sown in the ground rather than in trays. Sweet corn. Now this is my absolute favourite. You won't get anything better than homegrown sweet corn. And if you're growing sweet corn, you need to pick it and eat it at the same time. Once you've picked it, take it home and cook it straight away, because it starts to lose its flavour as soon as you pick it. And you need to grow them in blocks so that they pollinate with one another as the wind blows. But yeah, I have great success with sweet corn, and it is one of the nicest things that I've ever grown. Tomatoes. Start potting up your tomato plants now into small pots, and be careful not to damage them. I've only just sown my tomatoes, but they soon catch up, and I will be having harvests all the way through to October, because I grow them in a nice warm polytunnel. Fruit. Are you wanting to grow any fruit this year? Now, anyone that's following me on Instagram and Facebook, you will know that I've absolutely bought loads and loads of fruit, and I'm still on the hunt for other stuff to add to my fruit patches, so stay tuned for them posts. I'm certainly going to be harvesting plenty of fruit this year. So if you're growing blackberries, you've still got time to plant blackberry canes, but make sure you plant them somewhere where you can support them, and the best place to plant blackberry plants is down the sides of your plots, because obviously you can train them down the side and they can grow down your fences, grow down wires and stuff like that, but just make sure you keep them all tidy and keep them all secure, or they'll grow out of control. Next up is fruit trees. It is too late to plant bare rooted fruit trees, but you can still pot fruit trees. So don't go planting any bare-fruited fruit trees. The best time to do that is through the winter, not now. And yeah, see if you can get some fruit trees growing in your plot. Melons. If the weather is warm and sunny and you have a greenhouse or a polytunnel, you could try growing melons. Now, I've sown absolutely loads of different varieties of melons. That's going to be my key thing to try and grow this year on the allotment, and see how good success we've got. I've got a massive polytunnel, so I'm going to be growing absolutely loads of different varieties in there, and I'm looking forward to sharing it all with you to see how well we actually get on with growing the melons and seeing if we can get some delicious fruit growing. Next up is raspberries. If you've not planted any raspberry canes yet, there's still chance, but be careful where you do plant them, because they do spread and they do send out canes everywhere. And all I do when they grow where they shouldn't do is I dig them up at the end of the year, and I just move them to where they should be growing. And now I've got a fantastic raspberry hedge from loads of raspberries what have grown over the years. Strawberries. Now, why not try growing strawberries from seeds? I've never actually grown strawberries from seed, but I've heard it's very hard to do. But you could give it a try and see how you get on. And if you sow them now, they won't fruit this year because it'll be too late, but they will fruit next year. So why not give them a try and see if you can grow some strawberries from seed. And finally, next up is flowers. Are you wanting to grow flowers? I certainly am. I'm growing absolutely loads of flowers on my allotment this year. And the flowers that need planting this month are, you can still plant lily bulbs if you're wanting to grow some lilies, but obviously be careful of the pollen stamens coming out of them, as they do stain. And also I've been warned to watch out for lily beetles, because I've planted some lilies and I'm hoping to get some fantastic displays from them. But we'll see. Hopefully we'll get some good lilies growing and the lily beetle won't get them too much. Marigolds. Marigolds are really easy to grow from seed, and they look absolutely fantastic, and apparently they're very good for helping tomato plants ripen the tomato fruits up. So why not try growing some marigolds and grow them at the side of your tomatoes. Nasturtiums. Plant these out in the garden this month. Make sure you plant them in poor soil. It doesn't have to be good soil. They like poor soil better than the rich soil. So yeah, if you've got some old soil, plant some in that and get sowing them. And you can also put them in salads, apparently. I've never actually tried tasting them, but I think they've got like a peppery taste, so I've been told. There's so many flowers out there that you can actually eat, but I've never actually tried any. I really don't fancy it, but one of these days I might do a bush tucker trial and see how well they actually taste. Next up is petunias. Now, if you're wanting to have some fantastic hanging baskets or pots and stuff like that, now is the time to be sowing petunia seeds, and you can get some great looking hanging baskets. And I've sown some petunias this year. It's the first time that I've grown them from seed, so I'm looking forward to seeing how we get on with them, and actually if we get some good displays. Sunflowers, now this is an all family favourite. Everybody loves growing sunflowers and they look absolutely fantastic. But why not try growing different varieties of sunflowers? I've got a mixed variety of sunflower seeds, and I did this last year, and the different types of sunflowers out there, you don't realise how many there actually is. And it's just fantastic to see all the different colours. They're not just orange and yellow. You can get black ones, you can get red ones and stuff like that. And yeah, you can have a great looking border of sunflowers. And you can also make use of the stems at the end of the year, because once they dry out, they'll be as tough as a garden cane. So you can use them for supports the year after and anything like that. So have a go and see who can grow the tallest sunflower. I know I got some massive ones last year, and they're absolutely amazing. They take a lot of looking after and watering and supporting, but once you get on top of looking after them, you can get some great looking sunflowers in the garden. So basically, that is all the seeds what you can plant in April. There's obviously a lot more plants out there what you can sow this month, but that's all the main type of seeds that you can grow. And I've sown absolutely loads in my greenhouse this year. I can't believe how many seeds I've sown, and I've probably still got absolutely loads left to plant. And we'll see how we get on. We'll see if we manage to keep up with watering them, and hopefully they'll all germinate, because I did plant them just before this cold spell. So I'm fingers crossed they do actually come to life and that they do actually get growing. But I have to say, I do love growing stuff from seed rather than actually buying the plants, because you're starting that process off. You're sowing the seed, you're looking after them until they germinate, then you're potting them up, keeping looking after them, and then you're planting them outside when that chance of frost has gone, and then you're nurturing them by looking after them, feeding them and deheading them on a regular basis. And it just makes you feel like you've done all that yourself, and you've created that flower from seed, and you've seen new life grow on your allotment or in the garden. So that is one thing that I absolutely love doing. But yeah, it's going to be a busy few months, and once you've sown all your seeds, you won't need to do any more seed sowing for a bit, and then you can concentrate on doing more jobs in the garden. And then come May time, June time, that is when the work begins, when you start potting everything up and planting it all outside, when that chance of frost has passed, and once you have got on with doing everything. So hopefully this year down at my plot, it's going to be the best looking plot it's ever looked, and I'm really bigging myself up here, but we'll see how well we actually do it and see if we manage to get that best looking plot down at the allotment. We'll try as best, we certainly will, and I'm really hoping that we do get a good looking plot this year. I just want to share all the photos with you and share my progress and show how we get on, and if we manage to get that good looking allotment, and how easy it is to do as well. It doesn't take a lot of hard work to get growing stuff from seed. It just requires determination and hope and prayer, and hopefully you do get that good looking flower at the end, or vegetable. And when you're growing vegetables from seed, wow, if you've not grown vegetables from seed before and you compare the taste between shop bought and homegrown, you will see the difference. And yes, it can work out cheaper in some sense, or it can even work out more expensive for the amount of time that you put in, but the taste quality is outstanding, and you know that they are organic because you know what you've put into them and what you've fed them and stuff like that. So you know what you've got put into getting that crop of fruit and vegetables from your plot. So yeah, it's going to be a busy month this month for myself gardening with Ben, but hopefully it will all be worth it. And now that I'm working shifts, I get 4 shifts off after I've done 4 shifts on, so I get plenty of time to spend down at the plot. I don't just get 2 days at a weekend or at an hour a night after I've finished work. I get actual 4 full days down there, which is fantastic. And come summertime, I will have that allotment looking tan, and there'll be plenty of selfies coming along on my Instagram and stuff like that. And yeah, I love sharing my progress of how I'm getting on, and the amount of time and effort I've put into my plot this year. I'm hoping that it does pay the rewards and we do get a fantastic outcome, because it has been hard work and I've kept going throughout all the winter. Usually I just hibernate in October after the year's ended, and I don't usually start back on the allotment until February, and then I'm rushing around at the last minute trying to get it all done, trying to get it all completed and looking good. But yeah, this year I'm well ahead of schedule. I've still got lots left to do on my allotment, but I don't have to do them. I've done all the main work that needs doing down at the plot. It's just all the added little extras that I need to do, and I've still got so much wood left on my plot. I've used that much wood through winter. I've got loads to paint this year because I've been using wood everywhere for my edging and for new paths and new beds, and I've been doing new shelving in my greenhouse and stuff like that. I've got so much to paint, and I'm not looking forward to doing the painting because I absolutely hate painting. I feel like it's a waste of time, but I do it to make my plot look good and look nice as well. So hopefully it will all look good once we've done all that. But that's my plan for April, is to get all my plot painted. That's if I can say my words out. But my first task at the moment is to get my polytunnel all sorted, which we started the other day. I started clearing it out, but that's going to take about 3 or 4 days work. You don't realise how messy it actually is. And I've had trouble with rats last year, and they managed to find a hole under my polytunnel, and they must have brought half of the allotment inside my polytunnel, so I'm having to dig up all the soil that they fetched into my polytunnel and take it back out again. But they made the soil good because they've grounded it all down and made it all nice and fresh, but I just need to take it all back outside again and put it all back into my allotment beds and put it back to how it should be. And then once we've cleared out all the polytunnel, then it'll be a case of disinfecting it, cleaning it, making it look good and looking fresh. And I disinfect it all because you don't know if there's any viruses hanging around from previous years, like tomato blight and stuff like that. So it's good to clean it all down and make it look fresh and disinfect it and get rid of any of those diseases what might be hanging around. And yeah, and just making any repairs to it. I've obviously repaired it after all the storms we've had recently, so we've repaired it all and made it strong again. But there's a few other little tears in it. I have noticed another split forming in it. I'm hoping that my polytunnel lasts another couple of years, but we're going to have to get that polytunnel skin ordered soon, ready for placing it come a winter time. I wouldn't do it in the summer or springtime because that's when I'm using it, but obviously we'd replace it in the winter if we needed to. And it was fantastic because one of my followers has been messaging me because he wanted to buy a polytunnel, and I'm advising him which one I bought and stuff like that, and which ones to stay away from. And he's been sending me progress pictures as he's been building his polytunnel, and it looks absolutely fantastic. He's so impressed with it, and he's going to be growing hanging baskets in his polytunnel. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on with it and seeing if he gets some fantastic crops from it as well. So feel free to send me messages on Instagram or Facebook. I do like to get messages from people. It's always great to hear from you. And if you've not listened to my other podcast channel, make sure you go and listen to that, Gardening and Allotment Tips. The link is in the description. And if you've not subscribed to this podcast yet, please do subscribe to it, as I do find the support so overwhelming when people subscribe to it. And it's free to subscribe as well, and you get notified when new podcasts come up. So that has been our podcast for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll hopefully be back tomorrow with another podcast. I'll also be recording a podcast after this for my other podcast platform, Gardening and Allotment Tips, where you can enjoy more episodes from me. So until next time, remember, keep smiling, keep gardening, and keep listening to Gardening with Ben's podcasts. So thank you for listening to today's episode of Gardening with Ben. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Remember to do click that subscribe button to stay up to date with all our podcasts. Feel free to share them on your Instagram stories so that it spreads the word about my podcast and we get lots more listeners. Feel free to check out my social media sites, Facebook and Instagram as well, Gardening with Ben, and also my YouTube channel, to stay up to date with all my handy videos, how-to videos, and sharing my tips and advice. And feel free to check the link as well in the description for my Gardening with Ben t-shirts. Lots of funny gardening design t-shirts in there for you to purchase at great prices too. So thanks again, and as always, remember, keep smiling and keep gardening.